Hi, welcome to the ACA Executive Summit. My name is Isaac, and I'm your host today. Thank you for being here today. Can you go ahead and give yourself a big round of applause? Thank you. So, I'm really excited today for what we're going to do. We are going to have a good conversation with our friend Doc Bates. Can we give him a round of applause as well? Yeah, so a few minutes, earlier today, I talked with Doc Bates, and he has a very interesting story, and I'll let him tell us the story. So just to kick it off, I have a question for you. All of us want to know about you. There's been a lot of buzz about Doc. You know, when I heard the name Doc, I thought it meant doctor. I thought it's just, the short form of doctor, but I figured that's your name, DOC. So who is Doc Bates?
Who is Doc Bates? I come from a really small town down in South Arkansas, and my grandfather's name was actually Doc. And so it's a kind of a family nickname, and then whenever I grew up and came of age, I took the name Doc because I found out that William didn't look good on a billboard. So that's why I'm Doc.
Awesome. And the next question for you is, what drives you? I know you've done a lot of things. Tell us a little bit about you, your career path, and what you've done up to now.
Well, thank you. I think a lot of what drives me is people telling me what I can't do in life. Yeah, so when I was a kid, I loved superheroes. You know, I loved the Superman. I wore the cape, and I had the magazines and the comic books and watched the movies. And I think about age 7 or 8, I realized that all things being equal, I probably wasn't going to ever be able to fly. And so I became interested in real-life superheroes. What I felt like was a real-life superhero were geniuses. Right. And so in school, we'd learn all about these guys like Thomas Edison and Ben Franklin, these people who've done amazing things, right, in history. And about the only thing I ever remembered from the whole Thomas Edison lesson was that he didn't sleep. That was my take home from Thomas Edison.
He used to sleep in his office most of the time.
And that's what we all were all taught, that he never slept. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to try it. Yeah. When I was fourth grade, I went home and got all my books in my bed and turned on all my lights, and I stayed up all night studying.
That's crazy.
Yeah, until about 10 o'clock the next morning. Yeah, because my fourth grade teacher, Miss Brake, did not like it at all. She said, "Wake up, Mr. Bates." And I said, I'm just a little bit sleepy. She said, "What's the problem?" I said, "Well, I didn't get any sleep last night because I stayed up studying." Right. She said, "Well, what do you think you're doing?" And I said, "I'm just taking a cat nap." She said, "Why are you taking a cat nap?" And I said, "Well, that's the way geniuses operate."
Wow.
I'm trying to be a genius. And she looked at me and she said, "You are not a genius." And it broke my heart. And I think a big part of my life, a lot of I consider her one of the first people that really clued me in that I wasn't special. Yeah. And then my life has been a series of events of basically people telling me that you can't do this, and me saying, yes, I can. And so that's been the driving force behind me.
I really like that. And when you talk about what drives you is people telling you that you can't do it, and you go ahead and do it. Sometimes we think you're just being aggressive and you just try to get back to people, but it ignites something in you. And that reminds me of something that happened to me when I was in second grade. I grew up in Africa, in Kenya, where when you're born, you learn the tribal language, and then you go to school, then they teach you English from second grade. And I remember when we learned the alphabets, and we started learning some real words, and the teacher went to the blackboard. That's what they used to use, and he wrote the word table, T-A-B-L-E, and he said, "Who can pronounce this word?" And nobody raised their hand, and I did, because again, I was a big mouth, and I messed it up. Really, I did. So I just went with the alphabets. T is A-B-L-E, and I said tabli. And man, he chewed me up. He made fun of me, and he made fun of my dad and my mom, and everybody went on and on. And I was in second grade. I was like, what's this about? And it really hurt me. And that came back to me when I was in sixth grade. Again, I went to a school where most of the teachers couldn't speak English very well. And I decided to learn how to speak English. So I'll sit next to a radio, and I'll listen to it for hours and hours, and then I'll try to imitate the way they were speaking, because people on the radio could speak very well. And that's how I learned how to speak English. So I know the power of telling people, people telling you that you cannot do it. So I think this is very relevant to the book that you've written about You're a Genius, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So you started out in art and music. So here you are, a kid who is basically a genius, but you get drawn into art and music. What attracted you to that?
What attracted me to art and music?
Art and music, yes.
Again, it was, I think anyone who, I think I was born with a natural bent toward music. You know, if there was an instrument in the zip code, I was banging on it when I was a kid. So I always loved playing music, and I always loved, even if I did it poorly, I wasn't afraid to make noise on an instrument. And so that's what I grew up doing. Yeah. And it's always been a dream of any kid, I think, not just me, but whenever they're playing an instrument as a kid, is that you want to grow up and be a rock star.
Yep.
And again, I made the mistake of opening my big mouth and telling people that I wanted to be a rock star when I grew up. And what did they tell me?
You can't.
You can't do it.
And you did it.
And I did it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So in the last, I believe, 10 years, you've transitioned from art and music